Okay, greetings everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, and loving life. Coming back at you with Word Wizard. And what the fuck is person? So, let's take a look at a different definition that most people are confused with. And as we saw in the earlier video, the lingua franca, the vehicular language, and how it's used in so many different forums, as if though it is actually English, when it has its own style, its own grammar style, its own definitions, its own connotations, and this and that. So let's take a peek at you.com. Is a AI generative workflow thinking AI for you. In other words, you can ask it questions, just like many other AI channels or sites. And I simply said, list all the U.S. code sections that define person. Now, this is, I've mentioned this before on other channels. And when you use these AIs, it would behoove you to ask it the same question 3 times to see if you get different answers from this AI. It would behoove you to continue up with follow-up questions to get a better perspective. In particular, when you already have certain information and AI doesn't give you the answer you expect, you follow it up with conclusory type questions. And so in this first question, it gave us 3 definitions. One from U.S. Code 1, one from 15 U.S. Code 7, and one from 18 U.S. Code 1. And instead of telling you directly what that quote is, it says this section states that the word person includes corporations, companies, associations, firms, partnerships, societies, and joint stock companies, as well as individuals. Remember, I spoke in the video earlier, we would be showing how that is connected. That's in 1 U.S. Code 1. So person relates to individuals as well as corporations, companies, associations, firms, partnerships, societies, and joint stock companies. And all of these interpret a legal or commercial entity. Therefore, an individual is also a legal or commercial entity. And you will see that particular term used as well. Says 15 U.S. Code 7, this section specifies that the term person or persons includes corporations and associations existing under or authorized by U.S. laws, as well as those of any state or territory. Under 18 U.S. Code 1, it says this section defines person to include any individual, partnership, corporation, association, or other legal entity. These definitions illustrate that in legal contexts, person can refer to both natural person, individuals, and legal entities like corporations. However, do not be confused by this as a natural person or even as a natural entity. Those are still legal or commercial entities, as in a living soul is not an entity. It is an organic life form. And so I went ahead, and because I know that is not all of the definitions, I put down the next question, or command, I guess, is more like it, conclusory. That is not all definitions of person in the U.S. Code. Please list all that you can find. And it gives us the exact same 3 definitions. So even though I stated that it is not all the definitions of person in the U.S. Code, please list all that you can find. It's going to stick to its guns, just like I'm just doing my job, people that will stick to their guns. Okay? So just like in communication with people, you have to communicate the same way with AI. And thus, I urge people to practice their communication with people by practicing with AI. So the next thing I stated was, again, there are many more definitions of person in the U.S. Code. Please list as many as there are in fact in the U.S. Code. Then it goes on and says, comprehensive list of definitions of person in the U.S. Code. The term person is defined in various sections of the U.S. Code, reflecting its broad application across different legal contexts. That's what we were speaking about in the previous video when it talked about it uses the English language in logic and aviation and politics and education and commerce and legal societies and all these things. It has a broad application just like the English language does. So person in its broad application, meaning more or less kind of ambiguous, it comes up again and gives me 1 U.S. Code 1, 15 U.S. Code 7, 18 U.S. Code 1, and then goes on to state 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more definitions, 6, 7 more definitions. So a total of 7 more definitions along with the first 3. So we now have 10. And again, my research shows that there are many more definitions of person than just that. And of course, at this point, I realized I'm also kind of limiting my question to just the U.S. Code as it relates to the Code of Federal Regulations, wherein they have definitions of person as well under the regulatory enforcement of the codification of the U.S. Code. So we have 10 there. So again, as I know there's more, I again stated that is not all of them. So again, list all the definitions of person found in the U.S. Code. So then it gives us 1 U.S. Code 8, along with 1 U.S. 1 and 1 U.S. or 15 U.S. 7, 18 U.S.C. 1, and then the 26 and 42, 42, 47, 50, 42. So it gave us another one at 47 U.S. Code and 2 U.S. Code. So we now have 2 more definitions. And again, I know there are many more. So I said, list at least 15 definitions of person found in the U.S. Code. So then again, it comes up with the 1 U.S. 8, same thing, same thing, same thing. And then it starts giving us more. Now we've got 29, 42, and 8. So now we have a total of 15 on top of the 12 that we got before. Now there's 15 more from the Code of Federal Regulations. Okay? So now we have 15 from the Code of Federal Regulations. And again, I urge you people to do your research so you find out. Again, it's going to talk about defines person to include any individual, corporation, partnership, or other legal entity. In the context of ethics regulations, person includes individuals and entities such as corporations and partnerships. In Social Security regulations, person includes individuals and entities that may be involved in claims or benefits. Defines person, 8 U.S.C. 1000 or 8 CFR 1001.1 defines person to include individuals and entities for immigration purposes. So it's still the basic same thing, but it's for different purposes according to the section. Okay? So then it says, please list 10 more from the U.S. Code and 10 more from the Code of Federal Regulations. So then it gives us 10 more that are different than the ones that it's already listed. So now we have 25 U.S. Code and 25 CFRs, all talking about the definition of person. And it says in national security regulations, person includes any individual, corporation, partnership, or other legal entity. 10 CFR 2.1, which is military, defines person to include any individual, corporation, partnership, or other legal entity in the context of nuclear regulation. Okay? That was from U.com. Now, if you go to Google turns around and says, and I question 31 U.S. Code definitions of person, because I don't believe, let me see here, make sure, because I don't believe they mentioned any 31 U.S. Code definitions in here. Oh, okay, they did have 31 CFR. Yeah, they had a 31 CFR, and that was it. But I know there are definitions under 31 U.S. Code, and it tells us here that 31 U.S. Code 9301 defines person as an individual, trust, estate, partnership, or corporation. 31 U.S. Code 5312 defines person as an individual, trust, representative of an estate, or governmental entity. Now there's that term entity again, and when we think about a legal or commercial entity, that is a synonymous kind of ambiguous runaround of what a governmental entity is. The state created that person, and you attached yourself to it by presumptions of legal fiction. 31 U.S. Code 3716 and 317 exclude agencies of the United States government from the definition of person, while 31 U.S. Code 5336 includes individuals acting as nominees, intermediaries, custodians, or agents on behalf of another individual, which would be your government agencies. So they're not persons, they're considered individuals acting as, and then another personal descriptor. Okay. 31 CFR 1010.605, which I believe is different than the one they contexted here. Yes. This one they contexted in U.com was 31 CFR 589.339. And it says, U.S. person to include any individual who is a citizen or resident of the United States, as well as any entity organized under the laws of the United States. So back to this one, it says 31 CFR 1010.605 defines a non-United States person as a natural person who is not a United States citizen and does not have the privilege of residing permanently in the United States. So you have United States person and non-United States person. A non-United States person is not a citizen of the United States, and a United States person is a citizen of the United States. And then we got what U.S. Code sections define U.S. person, and that is the same question I asked of U.com. And when they came up with the list, they came up with a different list. They did give 18 U.S.C. 2510 defines person to include any individual natural entity or legal entity, including state and U.S. agents. 1 U.S.C. 8, 22 U.S.C. 1641, 20. So again, we see they didn't list all of them either. They have a limited list of 6 here. Okay? Now, what is the U.S. Code when it comes to the definition of person when it talks about legal entity? And I spoke earlier of the legal and commercial entity. Well, for the commercial entity, we look at the UCC. So let's take a peek. This is the definition of person in UCC 1-201, general definitions. And we see that person means an individual, corporation, business trust, estate, trust partnership, limited liability company, association, joint venture, government, governmental subdivision, agency, or instrumentality. So in commercial transactions, the government is a person. In legal transactions, they are not a person. Public corporation or any other legal or commercial entity. So while in the context of the U.S. Code, they use the legal entity, in commercial aspects, they use or any other legal or commercial entity. Now, let's take a look at the securities section of UCC 9-102, definitions and index of definitions. And this has all kinds of good definitions that people should apprise themselves of. Accession, account, account debtor, accounting, agricultural lien, as extracted collateral. These are the abstracts. Authenticate bank cash proceeds, certificate of title, chattel paper, collateral, commercial tort claim. All of them, all good. Communicate means to send written or other tangible record. To transmit a record by any means agreed upon by the person sending and receiving the record, or in the case of a transmission of a record to or by a filing office, to transmit a record by any means prescribed by filing office rule. This is much like the postal rule. So let's look at person as they have it defined in the securities section of the UCC, and they don't have an actual definition of person, but they have person related to. With respect to an individual means the spouse of the individual. Understand, this is a commercial, relatively commercial term. A brother, brother-in-law, sister or sister-in-law of the individual. An ancestor or lineal descendant of the individual or the individual's spouse, or any other relative by blood or marriage. I don't like this term as it's a modern term for wedlock, which is a more accurate term for such a communion of a covenant between two natural living souls. Of the individual or the individual spouse who shares the same home with the individual. Now that's person related to, with respect to an individual. And this is person related with respect to an organization. In other words, that group. A person directly or indirectly controlling, controlled by, or under common control with the organization. And the organization is a corporate entity known as the United States. Organized under the laws of the United States. An officer or director of, or a person performing similar functions with respect to the organization. That's the presumption. You're performing the same functions. It's their job to do the paperwork. All you have to do is give them the data elements. You cannot be required to sign anything if they are portraying it as a benefit. If they are telling you you are required to sign, then there must be an acknowledgement and disclosure of rights, duties, responsibilities, liabilities that go in equal consideration with the exchange of benefits. Please understand the language that I'm using, folks. It is very concise. C, an officer or director or a person performing similar functions with respect to a person described in subparagraph A. These two here are talking about an organization as a first person and then performing similar functions with respect to the organization as a second person, or performing similar functions with respect to a person described in subparagraph A as in place of a third person. This is the element of first person, second person, third person right here before your eyes. This is Samuel Clemens. This is Mark Twain. This is Tom Sawyer. D, the spouse of an individual described in subparagraph A, B, or C. E, an individual who is related by blood or marriage to an individual described in subparagraphs A, B, C, or D, and shares the same household with the individual. One last one I want to pull up is 15 U.S. Code 4724. And in that one, we're talking about trade shows. And as soon as you show them identification, there is a trade of data element. And under this, E, definitions, as used in this section, the term United States business means a United States citizen. It also means a corporation, partnership, or other association created under the laws of the United States or of any state. This is the Census Bureau, the Bureau of Vital Statistics, the state's vital statistics jurisdiction that is created for each individual upon enumeration at birth. A foreign corporation, partnership, or other association, more than 95% of which is owned by persons described in subparagraphs A and B. Oops, excuse me. A and B. A United States citizen and a corporation, partnership, or other association created under the laws of the United States or of any state. So they are legal entities only, okay? As a corporation, partnership, or other association that was created under the laws, not under God. The living soul is created under God. Persons are created under laws that man create using verbs, nouns, and factual event data. With that, we come to the end of our stream. I hope you liked today's personification of what the fuck is person. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you again next time. God bless.